that, I remember. That would be super. Unfortunate.
Then I'm at home and you're like, oh, well, we forgot something.
Oops, can you come back? Yeah, so thank you for being here, letting me lend some of your time and, well, to borrow some of your time.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
More than welcome. It's a privilege actually to have you here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how I feel at the moment. So we are here to talk a little bit about your career in science, what has been your influence in science and how do you feel about it, and maybe if you know a little bit what your next plans are.
All right.
Also we will talk about if you have advices for young scientists. That would be, I think, very, very much appreciated for many people. Yeah, so maybe I would actually like to know a little bit more about your background. So basically how you got into science, or what was your first contact with science?
Sure. So I studied mathematics. Not the typical thing where you see a woman, actually. So I was in the beginning a bit afraid that I was surrounded only by men and feel a bit weird. But actually it was applied mathematics, so we were more women than men.
No.
Which I found really nice. I mean, it doesn't really matter for me, but just as a sign also for others, it was nice. And then, yeah, studies are always quite theoretical. I did an internship in my master's at the Fraunhofer Institute, where I worked a little bit on really applied problems, and I really liked it. And after the studies, then I wanted to find something where I could work with science. I just wanted to try it. I wanted to see how it is, if there's a difference between things that you know, like you have a little bit more, you know a little bit more about industry, at least from my perspective. My parents were no academics, so I didn't know anything about it, but I wanted to try it. And I always was interested in cancer research, so I approached the German Cancer Research Center and so they didn't have any open positions. I just approached them and they were really nice. They invited me for an interview. It was, just really friendly, like just meeting friends and chatting with them. They were telling me about their projects, and then, I decided this would be a nice workplace.
Then that made you think, oh, this is my place.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. If you would go back in time, would you do it the same way? So will you still pursue science? Do you feel like you will still do it?
Yes, I would think so. I think it's a really nice thing, and if you want to change something, then this is the right way, because if you go to industry, you don't usually have freedom to do what you want. And I have the feeling in science, if you have an idea, you're encouraged to work on this idea. If you're in industry, then, well, perhaps it's not along the lines of the company, perhaps they want to do something else. And I would do it the same. Perhaps I would be more confident about myself, because I'm always like an imposter person, thinking that everyone else is doing it better, and I'm a perfectionist, I want to do it right. I think I would just say, okay, you know what you know, and everything that you don't know, you can learn that. You're willing to learn. This is also something that I always wanted to explore new things. I like to learn, and I think in industry, of course, you have different pros, but also cons, and you are not as free to do what you want.
And now that you mentioned actually about you feeling like an imposter, a lot of the times, I think that many of us, me included, feel the same. I don't know how often, but I would say for me probably like at least 80% of the time I feel like an imposter also. And I think that many people actually suffer from the imposter syndrome, which is quite known in science. So do you feel like that's something that you handle better over time, or that it goes away, or do you think that it actually gets worse over time, so that feeling just stays with you?
It depends a bit on whom you talk to. Sometimes, if you're in research, especially if you're doing a PhD, you usually have your specific topic, and you're the expert in it, because you wouldn't do a PhD if you wouldn't know about it. But there are other topics, and it's just natural that you cannot know everything. And I have to remind myself of this constantly. But sometimes then you talk to people and feel like, wow, they know everything about it and I have no clue. And then you sometimes think, okay, is it stupid to ask? It depends on the mood, and sometimes I just don't ask because I feel dumb. But I'm trying to work on it. I'm trying to remind myself that it's just a natural thing. You cannot know everything, and it's even good if you ask. And they are the experts, and they are always happy to help you. And also within our team, I think it's really nice that you can just talk to people and no one will say, haha, you're stupid, you don't know that. They would just say, yeah, well, no problem, I can just give you an insight, and then that's it. I mean, this is what is really nice. And I think it's also a thing of science where it's kind of the process that you learn new things. People are exploring new new techniques that of course you cannot be aware of all of them. And I think it's the nature of the thing that you learn, that you are getting better in things, that you also get to know other perspectives. And I think this is a nice way. But still, I'm not away from it.
Yes, I feel the same as you. I think that it's something that takes some time until you
I'm also not sure if you're completely over it at some point. I'm not sure if it's a part of your personality a little bit. But I think it's important at some point to step back and say, okay, if you just talk to others, this really helped me to see that they're also not perfect. And they also do not know about every little detail about any method, any application, anything. And this really helped me.
So if you... so I usually try to do this kind of mental experiment. I think that stayed with me from my dad also. So I think a lot of the things that I think about right now just trace back some way or another to what I used to talk with my dad. And one of them is that sometimes I just find myself thinking, if I could go back in time, would I do this the same, or what would I do different? And of course, it's many times like, yes, of course I would do it differently. Like I made so many mistakes. Like I personally think that if you haven't made any mistakes, it's because you probably didn't do so much in life. But that's just personally for me. And so I'm curious about if you could go back in time and do something different. Strictly speaking about your science career, would you do something different, and how will you do it?
I think perhaps I would have directly started with a PhD, because then I would already have been finished. Because I started as a research scientist, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay, if I really wanted to do a PhD, because I also heard it's really stressful and people are struggling with it, and I just wanted to be on the safe side. Starting first, but then I had the impression that I'm actually doing the same thing as our PhD students, basically. And then I at some point thought, well, I could also do the PhD program and then start from there. I think this is the main point that I would do differently. But as I also said, being confident about yourself, But I think it's also natural if you're younger, then perhaps you're not so confident, you haven't had so much contact to other people, especially if it's your first job. Then you always don't know what people are expecting, if they expect you to know everything. But especially in science, I think that's a good thing, that if you're not so into a specific topic, then you are able to learn it. And you have people that can help you, or point you to lectures, to references where you could start. So I think this would be the main point.
So during your time when you were working as a scientist, basically, you felt that the job that you were doing basically was kind of the description of what a PhD is, basically.
Basically, I mean, I also think this depends a bit on the project, and sometimes the scientists are also working on more like engineering problems, implementing stuff, and so on. This is really project dependent, but I had the feeling, I was publishing similar to the PhD students. I was working on a specific problem. I was exploring different things, analyzing data, questions, and I think this was the same thing that the PhD students were doing.
Mm-hmm. If that's okay for you, I would like to go back a little bit to what we were talking about before, which was if you could go back on time, what would you do differently?
Yeah.
So I would like to actually formulate it differently now. So if you had a student, let's say a very young student, and you, of course you are a very amazing teacher. I know that most of the students that you supervise, they are really happy with you. So my question would be, if you were to give them an advice, something that you think it's really important, maybe not the most important thing to know because that's very difficult to define, but if you wanted to give them a really good advice for their scientific career, what would it be?
I think it would be something along those lines. If you're really interested in something, do it. So be strong and don't let others get you down. If at some point you will always meet people that say you're not good enough, or do you really want to do this, really you? And I also have experienced, not that strong, but imposter. I always interpret things like this. But I would tell them that they should just, if they want to do this, try it out. And if it doesn't work, then you could still do something else. But if you're really interested, if you really live for something or really are motivated to try something, do it. And if you're frustrated, if you go to several job interviews and all of them don't want to have you for several reasons, it's not always because you're bad. Sometimes they just don't have money or don't have the time to advise you, whatever. Just go for it. And also, if you go to a job if you want to have a job, then not always rely on positions that are online. Just approach them and talk to them. I did the same for my job. They didn't have any open positions. I just said, I like to research. Do you want me? Basically. Describe what you were doing. And I was also talking to some people in the past. So someone who is working on her master's thesis currently, and approached me because I'm doing more meta science, not so much in algorithm development, but more on a top view of it. And she's interested in the same things and said it's really difficult to find a lab that is doing something like this. How should I do this? And I also told her, just approach them, tell them what you like, what you would like to do, and perhaps they're open to it. Perhaps they haven't thought about it. And if you have a cool idea, just tell them, well, I would be interested in researching on this and that topic. And perhaps they say no, but perhaps they're also saying, well, that's a good idea. Come and work with us.
Well, that sounds very inspiring. I am wondering now, is it too late for me to be like I would have really liked to have someone like you as one of my tutors or mentors when I was studying. It's not a criticism for my former supervisors. It's because they were also amazing. But would have been nice to have an Annika on my life. Yeah. So I think that's a good point to stop, and I would like to thank you for your time again. As I said before, I think you're an amazing scientist, an amazing person. As I have gotten to know you over the past years, and yes, thank you very much for coming today and talking to me about
Thank you.
Science.